Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg.
Hello, everybody.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Miami Let's Cast, the 15th of many episodes of your video games podcast out of Miami, Florida. Today we got a really good show. First off, of course, I'm going to dip into a little bit of what I've been playing. We're going to talk about new releases this week and last week to catch up, as well as some cool announcements that were, announced. Nintendo's in the news again, of course. We're going to talk a little bit about them. Sony teases us a little bit. Oculus is in the news, as well as some Fortnite Player Underground's drama. And we're going to top off the show with games as a service. It's trending upward. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So let's get going here. So first off, of course, I'm going to go into what I've been playing. And I had a pretty extensive list. I picked up a couple cheap games or lower price games, and I've been playing all over the place. I feel like I need to break free from the Switch a little bit. So, of course, I've been playing the Switch, but I've also been playing PC as well as some PS4 stuff. So, I did go into GameStop and I bought a little game called Avon Colony. It's a game by Team 17, which are the people that brought you the Worms. The Worms game? Bring you Worms. That doesn't sound right. It's basically a city builder, kind of in the vein of City Skylines. A really nice game. It's more handholdy. It walks you a little bit more. It's more confined. It's not as open as City. But for somebody who doesn't want to learn the intricacies and doesn't want to have it so open, this is perfect. It does get rough. They give you specific missions that you got to accomplish. And within those missions, then you can kind of have a little bit of free will. You're going to manage the cities, obviously. You're going to defend the city. You got to mine the coals and such. You got to keep the people happy. You need to control the air pollution. You need to control different parts of the game, including the traffic between buildings and such. And, of course, encourage more people to come to your city. So that is definitely a cool little game. I put a few hours into that. Very, very fun. Avon Calling is the name. I definitely recommend it. I know I'm a little late to the game, but I finally got my hands on or a chance to play Undertale. It is, for those who haven't heard of it, it is a kind of cute little RPG. The art is not super nice, but the game story is so phenomenal. I'm not going to ruin anything here for those who haven't played it, obviously, but it does have a lot of RPG tropes, or it makes fun of the RPG tropes that we're used to. For example, there was a part where it says, all right, hit that switch. So I hit the switch, and there was a switch right next to it that they made no reference to at all. And then, all right, let's go. So this is very early in the game, so it's not any spoilers there, but I'm like, all right. And I couldn't help myself. I had to come back and push the switch, and of course it didn't do anything. And it made a nice little comment about me doing that, of course. But great little game. I'm a little bit into it, but I know it's a ways to go. I know it's a little bit of a long game, but I heard that it is very, very good. So I ordered the physical copy through a website that was having a promotion for it. I think that they're shipping that out this month, so I should get it in the mail for the PS4 soon. However, I did play this one on PC. Dope little game. I also got to play Project Cars 2. Project Cars 1 was phenomenal. I think it is a car game done right, at least for the simulation fans. Obviously the more arcadey kind of vibe, you go over games like Burnout or maybe even Forza Horizon 3 for those who got Xbox. This game is super nice. It's got tons more cars. The main thing here is that you have obviously the different weathers. The graphics are insane. And then you have different scenarios. So for instance, you can be driving at night and maybe one of your lights go out. You're basically driving off with the reflection of the hood. So it can be challenging in those certain cases, but The game is just phenomenal. It's a racing game for simulation fans. It opens up from the get. You're not trying to basically unlock the cars through credits and such. You're just, here you go. Here's the game. Here are the different types of races that you can do. Have at it. And then, of course, you can start from the beginning if you wanted to, kind of to work your way up if you wanted to go that route. But if you just wanted to start with the A cars, the supercars, you can certainly do that. This game allows you to do that. So a very nice game. I think it's probably the best racing game to date, in my opinion. Just like any other game, it's got little things that I didn't like, but for the most part, this game is an absolute phenomenal game. Definitely recommend it to those who haven't picked it up. Project Cars 2, especially for those who enjoyed the first one, it's gonna give you more of the same, and which is nothing bad about that, with some minor improvements, obviously. I also played a little game called Ruiner. So Ruiner is a top-down, I want to call it a twin stick shooter. It reminds me a lot of Hotline Miami, even though is, I guess, more the art style and the type of vibe, or more the type of vibe, less the art style, because this is more of a 3D feel. Obviously, the Hotline Miami is a top-down, more pixelated game, but it reminds me in that way because you are top-down. You do have that kind of almost like 80s music. The color schemes are very again, Hotline Miami-ish with the colors, the reddish and the pinks. You're basically going, at least in the very beginning, the game does eventually open up, but in the beginning it's kind of walking through a tutorial, and during that tutorial you're going basically room to room, and you start off with a bat, short range weapon, but then you eventually get some guns and you're going at it. I mean, the game is difficult, so they're coming at you. There's a mechanic where you can slow down time a little bit, and that helps out a little bit, but they're still coming at you, and those bullets are pretty darn precise. So Ruiner, I've been playing some of that. I also got to play this game called Echo. So I didn't even know this thing was a thing. This game it looks phenomenal. It opens up the menu screen is an eyeball, and it's basically this woman opens up after about 100 years of slumber. You're kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Your father kind of put you on some sort of mission. Again, I maybe 2 or 3 hours into this game, so I haven't figured it all out. But basically, there is some sort of AI that's kind of interacting with the main character. She keeps making references, of course, to her father's legacy. So they eventually leave the planet. They get on to some sort of other planet, and she discovers like this huge ass mansion that just look. I mean, again, the visuals in this game are stunning, and the whole thing is. I kind of don't want to ruin it because it's a nice little reveal in the beginning, but the whole idea is, you can see the trailer. The trailer kind of ruins it, but you basically eventually it turns into a stealth kind of game where you're fighting yourself or versions of yourself. So depending on how you play your game, the game adapts. So if you go aggro, the game eventually the lights go out and then they come back on, and then these AI who are mirror images of yourself eventually adapt to that aggro style. Or if you're a little bit more stealthy with it, you can kind of put off the eventual smartness of these AIs, if you will. They do get a lot smarter depending on how you play. So obviously, I'm trying to do it as stealthily as I can. I have been caught a couple times. You go aggro, you pull out the guns, they're going to pull out the guns. So you need to be careful in that aspect. But Echo, great game that I didn't even know existed until recently. I also got to play Cuphead, man. This game is just, I mean, this is perfect. So it's got a 1930s cartoon feel with a lot of the kind of 1980s video game kind of play. And so the game starts off, you're Cuphead and Mughead. You're shooting craps at the tables in the casino. They're rolling, they're winning. and the devil comes out. He's apparently the owner of the casino and says, hey, if you win the next one, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the casino. And they're like, yeah, well, let's roll. So in the excitement, they agree, but in exchange they give up their souls, right? So they kind of roll and they crap out. They get snake eyes, and the devil says, all right, you owe me your soul now. And they're like, there's gotta be something. So he basically sends them to this world for a chance to kind of redeem themselves, if you will. And it's a bunch of almost like little mini games in this overworld where you can get certain upgrades, and you could apply those, like different shooting mechanics, longer dashes, a little bit more life. In exchange, you give up some firepower. But there are some changes depending on the playstyle, so not every playstyle is going to be the same. The game kind of opens up, and you can kind of take different routes. You're not necessarily going in one direction. You can play it in different ways, and there's different mini games. Most of it is boss fights, some of it is platforming, but it's all very, very fun. It's done very, very well. It's very difficult, at least in the beginning, until you get used to the mechanics. You're trying to not just beat the level, but you're trying to beat it in a way where you do certain things. For instance, you try not to lose any life. You try and play it all the way through without losing a life. You try and clear the stage, obviously, by getting a higher score and things of that nature. So very cool game. I know it's been on the list of a lot of people for a while. Cuphead delivers on everything that they promised on, and I think it's definitely worth a pickup for those who have not picked it up. So of course I got to play a little bit of the Switch. This past Friday we had the release of Stardew Valley on the Switch, and I've already played this game on PC. I played it on PS4. It's a game for those who don't know, it's in the vein of Harvest Moon. And Harvest Moon is basically a game where you're kind of building your crops, and you're farming, you're watering them, you're building the city. You get to meet people around the neighborhood. They send you on like little missions, and then depending on what you do, you get money, and then you start expanding your house. So it's almost like a loop where it doesn't end. And this is one of the few cases where, because most of the time I do like to play a game where it has a clear beginning and a clear ending. For the most parts, I stick to RPGs, tactical RPGs more specifically, linear games, some open worlds, of course, The Witcher and things like that have clear endings. But in this case, there's not necessarily a clear ending. You can play this game forever, and it's one of the few exceptions in my typical game style. And it's just because it's so fun to play. You get to play it the way you want, and I kind of like that. I like that. It doesn't go crazy with the graphics, but it still looks nice. It looks very pleasing. So definitely, those who have not yet, play Stardew Valley, and you have a Switch, definitely recommend that. I also beat Mario Cross Rabbids. Finally, the game is so much fun. I definitely recommend that one as well. I try to obviously play games that are exciting. I don't spend too much time in the games that are a waste of my time, but Mario Cross Rabbids, I made it all the way through the end, and after you beat the final boss, it basically opens up, and there is more things to do. They unlock new weapons and such. So I still got some work to do to kind of, I guess if you want to call it 100% the game, but I did see credits, so the game is definitely worth playing. It's a lot of fun. I would say I spent maybe 25-30 hours in the game. Again, tons and tons of fun. It's Mario Cross Rabbids, and it plays a lot like XCOM, which is my favorite. Between that and Borderlands 2 are my favorite games in recent memory. I did also pick up a little game called 88 Heroes, and it's the 98 Heroes edition for the Switch. That game is a lot of fun. It is basically, you got the bad guy. The bad guy says you have 88 minutes to basically clear the game, and each stage gives you 88 seconds. You have 88 heroes. Each time you hit somebody's 88 points, so you get the idea. It's surrounded around the number 88. And then you go through, every time you die, instead of respawning as the same hero, you respawn as a different hero, and they're all different and they're all surprising. I did find, however, there is one hero where she flips a coin, and then on that coin flip she either dies or she goes straight to the exit, which is basically the point of each level. You go from beginning to end, and it just so happened that she was my final hero that survived, and I just kept spamming the flip coin. And then when you die, it lets you retry, so long as, I mean, the clock keeps ticking, the 88-minute clock keeps ticking. So you can lose that way, but you can retry, and they basically give it to you in the last position that you have, the last level, with the last hero that you had surviving. In this case, I was just flipping the coin, boom, 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 spamming the hell out of it. I think that's a little glitch that they got to fix, but for the most part, it's a very, little fun game. Not funner than any of the ones that I played on this list, but it's definitely worth a look. For those, again, that's 88 Heroes, the 98 Heroes edition for Switch. And then finally, I did play a game that I've been keeping an eye on for a while. It's getting released for the Switch next month, but I did pick it up for PC. It's out for PS4, Xbox as well. It's called Battle Chasers. Now, this game is, in Battle Chasers Night War, I think it's the subtitle. So this game basically is a turn-based RPG, kind of in the vein of the old days. You travel in this kind of overworld, and kind of in the vein of Mario Brothers 3, which is my favorite Mario game. You're kind of moving from world to world, and then once you're in that world, you basically, for instance, there's a dungeon, and then within that dungeon there's enemies. Of course, there's a boss at the end of the dungeon. And you pick up loot, you pick up money with those stuff, you stat up. So it's a very nice looking game. So again, highly recommended, Battle Chasers. I'm waiting for the Switch release to pick that up so I could be able to play this game on the go. But it's been fun playing it on PC thus far. So that's it for what I've been playing this week. Definitely would recommend a lot of the games on that list for those who have not played it. But I did want to get into the new releases for the last week, and then what we got coming up this week. So as it stands, we have, let's see, we're in October, so let me go through the list here. Okay, here we go. So this week on the 10th, we saw the release of Middle-earth: Shadow of War. I know there's been a lot of controversy with this game. Ultimately, I know the game is great. I wonder how much this microtransaction kind of bad publicity is going to hold it down as far as sales. But it is coming on the 10th, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. We also see on Friday the 13th, you got The Evil Within 2. That's also PS4, Xbox One, and PC. That game is not my cup of tea, but it's definitely on a lot of people's radar. The first one got you might call it a cult classic, if you will. And then the following week, so on October 17th for PS4, you got Gran Turismo Sport. Verdict is out on this game. I want to see how it performs. I'm a big fan of car racing games. As mentioned earlier in the show, I'm a big fan of Project Cars and Project Cars 2, along with Forza and a lot of other racing games. But I'm interested to see how this one performs. And after the long wait, it's out on October 17th. And then there's a game called Rogue Troopers Redux. So I don't know what this game is, but I'm kind of looking at the pictures here. It looks it's got an interesting art style. It's kind of like that reddish look, similar to the Ruiner game that I was mentioning earlier. That game is due out on the 17th as well. That one's for PS4, PC, and Xbox One. And then finally, after like 1,500 delays, I wonder if they're gonna delay it to like the last day. South Park: The Fractured Butthole is coming out again on the 17th. I think that is definitely going to be the winner on the 17th. It's going to outsell the rest. I'm stoked to play that game, if anything, for the comedy, right? Even if the gameplay is not good, but I know the gameplay is good, at least if it's anything like the first game. So that one's coming for PS4, Xbox One, and PC as well. And then we have WWE 2K18. Hopefully this thing doesn't have microtransactions like the whole VC debacle with 2K18 NBA. That one's on the 17th, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And then you have the definitive edition of Age of Empires, which I'm stoked for. This is a freaking fantastic game. That's coming out October 19th for PC. And then one day later, on the 20th, you have Fire Emblem Warriors for the Switch, which is the filler until the true Fire Emblem comes out next year. So that is your new release list. Am I going to pick anything up there? Most likely going to take a look at South Park, Fractured But Whole, and I definitely want to get my hands on Age of Empires Definitive Edition, if anything for nostalgia reasons, to kind of remind myself of the games of yesteryear. And then there were a couple of announcements. We found out this week that Mutant Mud's collection was announced for Switch. That's basically Mutant Mud. It's 3 games. So you have Mutant Mud Deluxe, Mutant Mud's Super Challenge, and then a brand new game called it's a puzzler called Mud Blocks. I will link the trailer for that. It's about a minute long, so if you want to check that game out, we'll do that for you guys. And then a surprise, again, they call it a leak, but apparently retailers outed Capcom's next release. Street Fighter V Arcade Edition is coming out January 16th for PC, PS4. Now, I know they said originally that they weren't going to do like these super hyper re-releases of the game. They were just going to keep feeding content into it. And while that seems like a good idea on paper, I kind of like these releases because you kind of get these full versions of the game fully packaged without having to purchase all this DLC. So you get it on disc, which is really nice, especially for people. I like holding these Street Fighter tournaments, and it's nice not to have to purchase it for multiple systems and just buy the discs and do it that way. So it's going to come with the arcade mode, extra battle mode. There's going to be new V-trigger moves, a gallery, completely redesigned user interface, which is very nice. That interface that they have now is kind of shitty, but it is coming, and they said that all these upgrades are going to come free to download for the people who already own the game. So it's going to include, again, the arcade mode, all the things I previously mentioned, along with season DLC characters for season 1 and for season 2. I think it was outed by Amazon, if I'm not Amazon was the one that accidentally leaked this. So I'm definitely stoked for that. I'm a big fan, not of the launch game, because it was kind of missing, of course, some features, most notably the story mode, but they fixed a lot of it, and this is definitely a welcome update. I will most likely be picking that one up come January, if not for anything, for the ability to hold these tournaments. So moving on to Nintendo, we have apparently Nintendo filed a trademark for a Game Boy related thing. And most people are assuming this is the Game Boy Mini. Of course, they've had incredible success with the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic. That is still impossible to find. What you can find is a ton of people are selling. I actually saw one on OfferUp that the guy had like a picture of. It must have been like 20 of them. I'm like, this is disgusting, man. Allow the people to buy these things, man. It's just really ridiculous. If you can help it, do not buy from these scalpers. That definitely is motivation for them, and it keeps the people who really wanted to play it out of their hands. So definitely don't do that. So in regards to the trademark, it was filed back in on September 15th, and they submitted a picture. Again, I'll link this down in the show notes for you guys, and it's a picture of the original Game Boy, the black and white one. So that's kind of cool. I remember, of course, we all have memories as kids, again, who grew up with these Nintendo products. I remember, if you guys remember, the link cables. I used to have one, and then my mom used to have one, and we linked it up with these link cables. Of course, this is before ad hoc and Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So we linked it up when we used to play Tetris together, and then my mom used to kick my ass in Dr. Mario, and I eventually got good. But it's crazy. This is nothing that we do anymore, but I still remember that as a little kid, because there was few things that I did with my mom, and one of the things we were able to relate together with was video games, and this was one of them. That and Pac-Man and Atari was the other clear vision that I have in my head. But I'm interested to see if, again, this is pure speculation. We don't know if it's going to be the Game Boy Mini. or if they're gonna release anything at all. But I feel like it's gonna be eventual, that it's gonna happen, especially with the success that they've had in recent memory. So there was a so Super Mario Odyssey got the first review. It's from Edge magazine. Again, all this is down in the show notes. They basically rated the game a 10 out of 10. So there's basically, this is crazy, because when do you get a freaking badass Zelda? That game is reviewing. It's one of the highest score games, and this one, if it's any indication, is going to set the pace for the reviews to come, and it has the potential to review even higher than Zelda, which is crazy to think of, considering how great that game was. So definitely Nintendo is taking numbers, and they're collecting, and I tell you this because they just announced that they're basically ramping up production. They're trying to produce 2 million units per month in order to keep up with demand. So they're trying to sell 20 million units, or at least ship out 20 million units by the end of this year. They expect great numbers during the holidays, and they attest the shortage not to any kind of malfunction or anything on the unit. Basically, they're saying that some key components to the DRAM have been hard to get, and I feel like that maybe those are some sort of mining things. And of course, they still haven't even launched in China. They plan on launching in China in early 2018. So this thing is moving. This thing is rocking and rolling, and if anything, this should send a message to the rest of the people, other people being Xbox, Sony, that, man, they gotta get on the boat, man. They gotta give this thing some sort of run for its money, particularly Sony. And I mentioned Sony because they basically trolled us all a little bit earlier this week. They said in a tweet, it just simply said, PlayStation Live from Paris week is coming. Tune in for big announcements and updates on 10/30. So Paris Games Week is coming out October 30th. I'm eager to see, because they have that October 30th, and then they have their, I believe it's late November, if I'm not mistaken, the PlayStation Experience. So they must have a lot of things up their sleeve, because they have all these, even though Tokyo Games Week was kind of weak, there wasn't any really cool announcements there. The fact that they're announcing this, I don't know if it's them just trolling to get some viewership, but I'm interested to see what happens there. And then just totally off the wall news here. Basically, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg announced a new Oculus Go. So it's basically a cheaper VR version. It's not like the super pumped Oculus Rift that you get. This is a more streamlined version of it in an effort to kind of bring in the masses. They expect to sell 1 billion of the units altogether, which is to me, it's an outrageous number. But it coming from Facebook, I mean, I don't know if that's a realistic expectation, but they're pricing it at $199. It's set to start. Again, I'll link this down in the show notes, but you can find out. You can sign up for a list, and they'll let you know more about it. There was also a price drop, a permanent price drop for the Oculus Rift. It launched at $599, and it was temporary cut to $399. They just confirmed that it's gonna stay there at $399. So that begs the question. I haven't experienced VR for gaming, anyways. I did throw on some of the the gear from Samsung, and I tried that. I mean, it's cool, but I suffer from vertigo, and for me, anyways, it's not tickling my pickle. But I wonder if there's gonna be any kind of traction here, if people are gonna get on this, or if it's just a fad that people are gonna move on with. So in other news, I have, and really this is gonna lead up to the topic of the show, which is games as a service. I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about that, but I bring this up mainly because Fortnite just announced that it surpassed 10 million players. Now, keep in mind, this is a free-to-play game. They were in the news recently with kind of battling back and forth with PlayerUnknown's Underground, which is a short version of PUBG, with this whole thing about how the guy that owns or that runs the PUBG stuff was basically upset. He said, they didn't confer with us. They basically replicated our mode within their game, and I understand his side of it. I mean, this is nothing new. This kind of battle royale mode, but it's a little bit more interesting when you're using or you're licensing their engine, an Epic's engine, and then they come out and come with a game which they're the makers of Fortnite. So there's definitely something there. I don't know if it's just for some sort of leverage or some sort of negotiation scheme, but nevertheless, Fortnite is having incredible success. Keep in mind, it is a free-to-play game. So they announced again they surpassed 10 million players, and the game just launched 2 weeks ago. So this is going to be telling a little bit about what's to come with PUBG coming to console. So if you guys don't know, PUBG is releasing for the Xbox One X on launch. It's arguably its most important exclusive, and now it's going to be a timed exclusive. I don't know how long it's going to be, maybe a year or so, but it is an exclusive. It is a hell of an exclusive that Microsoft got here, because this game is doing gangbusters. So again, they just announced recently that it topped 15 million in sales. 15 million copies on Steam, and that's according to GameSpy. The game it released in March. We're in October. It sold 15 million in just 7 months. It's insane to me. So the game sells for $30. So do the math, guys. $30, 15 million, and they're housing a lot of that. Some of that goes to Steam, but they're freaking doing gangbusters on this thing. So this kind of begged the question to me, and this is why I wanted to make a game of show. So we see a lot of these games of service kind of taking off. I don't know if it's the gameplay loop, if it's the constant patching, if it's the constant content that's coming, but it's definitely influencing the rest of the industry. As a matter of fact, it has tripled the industry's value. So they're definitely doing something right. I am not a big proponent of games as a service. I prefer to have, a packaged product. If it's a $60 game, I want to be able to have that game, again, a clear beginning, a clear end. But we've seen in recent memory games like, Rainbow Six Siege, Destiny 2, of course, the games I just mentioned in Fortnite and PUBG, Battlefield 1. All these games are taking a games as a service approach, and this was kind of brought in with, these free-to-play games. They kind of set this trend where, you get the game for free, and then you kind of have this continued content, and you have these little microtransactions. But they gave you this kind of loop where, again, I've mentioned it before, but it's almost like gambling, and it's kind of crummy. I don't like that the industry is going this way, and they basically said that. And I'm going to go to specific here. So Square was recently in the news, and they said that they're investing in games as a service. So Square Enix has historically been a single-player type of company. Games like Final Fantasy, you have Nier in recent memory. Most of the games have been like, your big RPGs, massive. So it's scary when a company like that says that they're trying to invest more in multiplayer experiences. As a matter of fact, they're bringing a multiplayer experience to Final Fantasy 15. I think that's coming out later this month, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm gonna read the quote here from you guys. So, in an effort to increase customer satisfaction and enhance the lifetime value of the games themselves, Square Enix will endeavor to develop games designed not to be played once after launch, but that customers can enjoy more and play longer. So games as a service and multiplayer games have been around for a while. Today, they seem as a game design that places strong emphasis on long-term user engagement, which is something we've seen Square Enix embrace recently with the steady content for, again, what I mentioned before, Final Fantasy 15. But they go on to mention, gone are the days in which single-player games were a primary status and multiplayer games secondary. Lately, multiplayer games have taken the lead, and it is standard for games to be designed for long-term play. So this is coming straight from the horse's mouth at Square Enix. It is kind of crazy to think that this is going to be the new norm. That it's going to be something. I'm okay with these single player experiences that come out, and if you want to add future content to them, and then maybe wait for the complete edition. I buy the complete edition because again, I'm not big on buying these piecemeal games. There's enough games for me to play. I have enough games on my backlog, as you guys can see. I have a ton of games behind me, but it's a little disheartening to see that this is the trend. I by no means want to eliminate this type of game. I mean, it's clearly popular. It's clearly inviting people and doing well. And obviously, if one company does it, has success with it, the other companies will follow. So, I've always told people, you got to vote for your wallet. So this isn't something that you don't like. Don't pick it up, man. Don't feed it into the whole kind of craziness that's happening. Now, on the other hand, if you're enjoying it, then by all means, it's great. I personally do not like this sort of business model, but as long as you can keep feeding me my RPGs and my single player experiences, I'm okay. With other people enjoying what they like. But if this is the trend, especially from a company like Square Enix, it's a little bit scary. Share your thoughts with me, guys. Tell me what you guys think on this topic. I know it's a big one. Most recently we saw a couple games, a couple great examples of games as a service when they fail. And what happens, Evolve is the first one. So that game originally launched, it was $60. Eventually it got whittled down all the way to basically free to play. And they had tons of content. They were in the news for all this crazy DLC. It was basically like another $100 and something. So the game was super expensive. And then all of a sudden, boom, nobody's playing it. So you just basically threw away your money. Another example, Battleborn is another example. I mean, these are, big companies trying to do these efforts and they're failing. You have your successes like Overwatch and Destiny and such, but how many of these games can people really play? I mean, if you're into Destiny, you're going to be playing Destiny all the time. If you're into PUBG, you're going to be playing that. If you're into Fortnite, you're going to be playing that. I wonder how many people are going to be bouncing around, and I wonder where it's going to be where, water is going to hit the limit. I don't even know if that's the right way to say that saying, but I wonder when it's going to be to a point where they're just going to start failing. I feel like that's going to happen inevitably. There's only so many games that people could play on a constant basis. If you're a COD player, you're going to be playing COD. If you're a Destiny player, you're going to be playing Destiny. Of course, you can bounce off every now and then and play some other stuff. But for the most part, if you want to be good at those games, you got to be playing them constantly, right? I remember I used to play Halo 3. I mean, I was huge into Halo 3. And I was a freaking beast, man. I was a freaking beast in that game. I just let it go for, I think it was like 6 months or so when I bounced off to other games. I tried to come back and it was just like, what the heck? Like, I was getting owned, and it's not a fun feeling. So you definitely got to be invested in the game. You got to be on it. And I feel like there's only so much that you can play. You can't really bounce to Battlefield 1 and then bounce back to Destiny and expect to be really good at it. I mean, you could definitely do that, but you get kind of used to the mechanics and it becomes muscle memory after a while. So I definitely went off a little bit of a tangent there, guys. But again, tell me what you guys think about that topic. Sound off in the comments. And for those listening to the podcast, make sure you guys rate us. Let us know how we're doing. Again, we have the website, which is MiamiLet'sPlay.com. I put a lot of my stuff up there. You can definitely subscribe to the podcast. I encourage you guys to do that if you guys enjoy this. And that's basically it for the show, guys. You can follow me at Miami Let's Play across all social medias. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for listening and watching. And game on.